Welcome back to another week of Instigating with Clarkey and Drury, or just Drury. Clarkey's under the weather. Get well soon, buddy. And that's okay. I've got it handled here because we've got a great guest on, a friend of the show. You know this guy, longtime freelance sports host, done a lot of work with our friends over at Homestand. Back in the day, we worked together at Fight Network. One day we'll have to tell some more stories about that time. Our buddy, Albert Vartanian. Albert, how are you, brother?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me on. Send my best to Clarkey. Hopefully he gets through whatever he's going through right now. I know it's a horrible season for cold and flu, right? So he's probably got something like that going on.
You know what I think it is, man? I think he has Mitch Marner withdrawal. That's what I think he's suffering from. His favorite player, he's just unavailable to the Maple Leafs right now, and he's having some serious withdrawal symptoms.
Well, he would have been happy last night.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Four Nations got kicked off, and we'll dig into that a little bit, of course. And I know you wanted to talk about Mr. Marner, or as Clarkey affectionately refers to him as Mr. Fancy Pants. And we'll talk about him pretty soon. But the main reason we wanted to have you on, buddy, is to talk about that Super Bowl. And there was really nothing super about it. I haven't seen a Super Bowl that bad since the Seahawks waxed Peyton Manning and the Broncos that one year in 2012 when the Legion of Boom was going off. And Philadelphia supplied their own Legion of Boom against Patty Mahomes and the Chiefs going for that three-peat. It was not to be. What the hell happened in this thing, man? Because look, I'm a Patriots guy. I love Tommy Brady. I didn't want to see this historic three-peat. I didn't want to see it. And Philly, I'm not the biggest fan of that city either. But what the hell happened here? Because not even I could envision Patrick Mahomes and his offense playing that poorly. What did you make of it?
I think everyone's still trying to figure out what happened at that Super Bowl. But, I mean, what was, previewing that Super Bowl was kind of painful in so many ways, because what was the conversation heading into it? It was, well, the Eagles are one of the best teams in the league on paper. They got a great quarterback, great defense, great run game, great special teams, great everything, the tush push, but it's the Chiefs. That was basically the conversation around the Super Bowl. So I felt like the lead up to the Super Bowl was kind of flat, and that's how the game ended up panning out. But it was incredible to see, because we haven't seen the Chiefs or Patrick Mahomes in that position in a very long time. This is a team that's made the Super Bowl, 5 in the last 6 or 7 years? So, perennial winners going for a three-peat, and they get completely shut down and shut out by the Eagles, who just had a better game plan and executed it much better. And we saw Mahomes make some throws that he normally doesn't. People will, maybe look at his stats in 10 years' time, be like, well, he actually had a pretty good Super Bowl, when that really wasn't the case. A lot of that came in garbage time. But yeah, it was a surprising result. I thought I was on the Chiefs. I was backing the three-peat. It's something I actually wanted to see. I'm a fan of dynasties. I know a lot of people aren't, but I'm a fan of dynasties. And it would have been crazy to see an NFL team win 3 in a row, it's so unlikely and it's so difficult to do. That's why it never happened. So that's something I was looking forward to. And that just wasn't the case, Ryan. It was just one of those games where the Eagles were just that much better, and the Chiefs couldn't contend.
And I think what was interesting, too, was the Eagles did it without the other storyline that was dominant, and that was Saquon Barkley needing to go off. That's what you heard from a lot of the pundits. Oh, well, if the Eagles are going to do this, Saquon's going to have to do Saquon stuff. And he really did, and I think he ended up with a little over 60 yards. Let me double-check that. And overall, he really didn't rack up crazy. 57 yards on 25 carries. 2.3 yards per carry. That's not Saquon-esque. I mean, he got some key first downs for them and everything on short yardage, but he didn't exactly go off and have a Superman performance, albeit breaking Eric Dickerson's, Terrell Davis's combined regular season and playoff rushing record, which, I mean, I think probably instantly catapults him into Hall of Fame conversation. But the Eagles did it with just good, smart offensive plays, play action, and some explosive throws from Jalen Hurts, who has completely turned the narrative of his early career around as well, Albert.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that that bothered the Eagles was that, the Chiefs were going for a three-peat. And I don't know if you read the story, but Pat Riley has a trademark on three-peat. And before the Super Bowl, the Chiefs were trying to get Pat Riley to allow them to use three-peat, I guess, for merchandise to sell after they won the Super Bowl. And after the fact, we heard from Eagles players that they were pissed off about that. Like, that put a huge chip on their shoulder. Like, these guys are trying to put out this merchandise like they won already, and they're talking about the three-peat, and we haven't even played the game yet. And I'm not saying that was the only reason why the Eagles won, but I think if you look back on that, it's one of those situations where the Chiefs, I think, maybe took their foot off the pedal a little bit, considering that that's one of the things that they're thinking about. That's something that was put out there, not necessarily that the players were talking about it, but that's the position I think the Chiefs' mindset was in slightly, is that maybe they were underestimating the Eagles a little bit, and they went into it with a bit of arrogance, and I think that hurt them in the end.
That's a pretty dominant storyline right now in the aftermath of all this. I mean, it's 24-0 at halftime, and the Chiefs had like 38 total yards of offense at half. Like, and I heard Mina Kimes and a lot of the talking heads talking about how what really, took this team apart, and what she and a lot of other pundits felt was an omen for this potentially happening, especially against a defense like Philly's, was the fact that even in all these close victories that the Chiefs would eke out, I mean, they won a lot of games by one score.
Yeah.
And a couple lucky ones, the missed field goal against Denver in particular sticks out. Was their inability to consistently establish a run game. And Kareem Hunt had little moments throughout the year where he was helpful at the goal line. Isaiah Pacheco, through up and down injury problems, had, I don't know, an okay year, but they weren't as a team able to establish a consistent run threat, and that really caused their offense in that Super Bowl to completely sputter, and it left Pat Mahomes having to kind of figure it out for himself, and he wasn't really able to do that.
Well, his line didn't protect him. Like, let's just be honest. It's not, I mean, it's easy to just point the blame at Mahomes, because when they win, who gets all the praise and who gets all of the love? It's Patrick Mahomes. So when they lose, he's got to take his fair share. But let's be honest, the O-line didn't protect him. He was under pressure all game, even though the Eagles didn't blitz. But it's just one of those situations where it was a complete breakdown, offensively. And actually, you know what? Defensively, they weren't bad. It's just the fact that the offense couldn't click. They couldn't score. Travis Kelce was nowhere to be seen. They don't really have that true number one wide receiver target. I mean, Worthy was good, but I think they needed a level above that. Maybe going into next season, that's something that they look at. Maybe they reunite with Tyreek Hill, or they try to bring over one of maybe Cooper Kupp or something like that. And I think they're really lacking that on offense. But no protection for the quarterback. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. It's going to be a long day, and it's going to be difficult when you're going up against Vic Fangio's defense.
Yeah, and Vic Fangio finally getting a deserved Super Bowl. The guy's been a defensive mastermind for a very, very long time, coming up on like a 40-year career of coaching, and he finally gets one. And that defense showed out, man. And you said it too, like, this was a crazy thing that I didn't even really consider until after the game was over and they started talking about it on the post-game show. I think Brady actually pointed it out, funnily enough, that he was calling this game. At the end of the broadcast in the fourth quarter, the Eagles put forth a really dominant and suffocating, especially over the slot, defensive performance. They didn't blitz one time. Yeah. They didn't blitz. They created all that pressure and sacked Mahomes. I believe it ended up being 4.5 times with just a front four. No extra help from the linebackers, no drop down, no leaving nickel coverage to get a cornerback or a safety to drop down and blitz. None. It's a fascinating stat, and it really speaks to that lack of offensive production from the receiver core that didn't really get open quickly enough as protection broke down around Mahomes throughout the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you're looking at the Eagles heading into next season. It's a really good defense, relatively young defense in certain areas. It doesn't look like anyone's going anywhere. It's going to be the same team heading into next season. The offense has obviously taken a step. Jalen Hurts has taken a step. Saquon Barkley is, arguably the best running back. Well, he is the best running back in the league, only going to get better. Now, this team is going to be a force next season and maybe for a couple seasons moving forward. I'd be scared. if I was any other team, especially in the NFC with the Eagles being there. I was reading a report today that they could be in on Myles Garrett. Imagine Myles Garrett with the Eagles on that defense. That's, next to unstoppable. But who knows? Maybe the Eagles are the next dynasty that we didn't see coming.
And that's something that I think, it's just to think about Myles Garrett on that team, combining him with guys like Josh Sweat and Big Play Slay, Cooper DeJean. Did he ever have a coming out party with that incredible pick on Mahomes? And yeah, you mentioned it earlier, like you'll look at his final line, which, punctuated by that awful first half. 21 of 32, 257 yards, 3 tuds, 2 picks, 2 really bad picks, one of them a pick 6, and one of them that led directly to 6 points right after.
Yeah.
Like you look at that and go, okay, that's a pretty good number. It's just that, like you said, 2 of those, well, 3 touchdowns, really, 2 of them especially came in very much garbage time, including what will ultimately, unfortunately, be forgotten, that unbelievable 65-yard bomb to Worthy. They needed that in the first quarter, though. And one thing that shocked me, too, despite some of the pressure that the Eagles were able to maintain with that front 4 and not blitzing, was that, Mahomes had time taken away and he got sacked a few times, but it wasn't an outrageous amount, didn't face a blitz, and he couldn't find any way to unlock this defense. And I'm sorry, but like we heard about it, the three-peat, he's already going to be better than Brady if he wins it, which I disagreed with. Now, I tweeted right after the game, Albert, the conversation is officially, and it always was to me, and I'm biased, it's dead. That the comparison of, Mahomes is already up there with Brady in GOAT territory, it took a shotgun blast right to the back, in my opinion. Tom Brady never, ever, ever got his ass whooped like that in a Super Bowl. He lost 3 Super Bowls. Yes, he did. You know what the combined total was that he lost those 3 Super Bowls by? 2 to the Giants, 1 to the Eagles. 15 points total across the 3 losses. Never mind the 7 wins. Patrick Mahomes lost 2 Super Bowls in embarrassing fashion now, to Brady's Bucks and now to these Eagles, by 40 points. Like, I'm sorry, man. I don't know where you stand on this, but I don't even think that guy is close to my boy TB12.
It's hard to get close to TB12. I won't say that the GOAT debate is dead, because Patrick Mahomes has a lot of years ahead of him. He's still an elite quarterback, the best quarterback in the league. So let's say the GOAT debate is on simmer right now. It's just simmering. He's going to get back to the Super Bowl at some point, you would think. Maybe it won't be with the Chiefs. Who knows? But you have to imagine that he's that good. He's going to get back to the Super Bowl maybe a couple of times, and he'll have a couple of chances to win a few more rings. But yeah, listen, what Tom Brady did throughout his career, it's almost impossible to replicate. And, one of the things that I thought about in that game, when the Chiefs go in, they were down by 20 plus points. You're thinking Mahomes, okay, maybe he comes out and does something special, but watching that game, I don't know if you felt the same way, but I never really had that feeling that the Chiefs were ever going to come back or ever be in that game. Now, if you put Tom Brady in that position at any age throughout his prime or his peak, even when he was with Tampa Bay when he won it, he's going into that locker room. The expectation as a fan for Tom Brady is that he's going to come out, he's going to do something special and get his team back into the game. That is the absolute expectation. And I think that's the difference between Mahomes and Tom Brady, is that Tom Brady has the expectation to come back and win that game because he's done that before. Mahomes, he's not quite there yet. And that's a huge, huge gap that needs to be bridged by Patrick Mahomes.
It's going to be hard to do it. Like, I don't already debate that I would comfortably put Mahomes in the top 10. I would even hear arguments for top 5. Top 3 would be difficult for me because I still think that Joe Montana is firmly in number 2. And I still firmly believe, as much as I don't like the guy, that Peyton Manning would probably be 3 for me. Right. I would even have probably Drew Brees at 4, maybe interchange him and Peyton. And I'd put Mahomes at 5. I don't have a a terrible problem with that. But when you're talking about the best to ever do it, like I felt the same way you just did. I didn't feel this oncoming onslaught of adjustments and new looks and changes to what they were doing on offense. But I did say to everybody that I was at the Super Bowl party with, I said, if my guy Tom Brady was playing quarterback for this team, we would be in for a hell of a spectacle in this second half. The reason why is because, listen, and Tom Brady has talked about this a lot since he became a broadcaster, and he was on Colin Cowherd's podcast before the Super Bowl and talked about what made him special. And he's always said, I'm not the best athlete. I never have been. I'm not a super athletic guy. I just took care of my body. But my superpower was I studied harder than anybody, and I knew everybody's defense intimately. I knew exactly what they were going to do before they did it. I knew what every look meant. I knew what the linebackers were doing. I knew what it meant. I knew when blitzes were coming, and even when I didn't, I knew when to check down and find somebody, because everyone on my team, he held everyone to such a high standard that he expected everyone to know exactly where to be. So Tom had 3 or 4 reads constantly. He knew where people were going to be. He didn't even have to look. He just knew someone was open over there.
Right.
And I don't get the impression that, and this isn't just a Mahomes thing, I think it's many of the quarterbacks in the NFL nowadays. I don't think people study film the way that guy did, and the way that Peyton did, and the way that Aaron Rodgers used to. They took it so seriously, and I don't think that guys know the other team's defense as intimately as those guys did. They know their offense as well, but they don't know the defensive reads up and down. And I just feel like if Tom Brady went into that game, came down from the booth and took over, I don't know that he'd come back and win it. I mean, he did it once. Doing it twice would be a tall task.
Yeah.
I think the game would have been a 1-score game at the end of it, though. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, maybe.
So
I mean,
that's the difference.
Yeah, it is the difference. But the thing is, like, when you're talking about Tom, and I think maybe this kind of squashes the GOAT debate, is that you're talking about one of one. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, Patrick Mahomes or, Josh Allen, watch as much tape as Tom Brady did. I think it's just maybe Brady processed that information a bit differently because he didn't have the same athletic abilities as a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. So his work came in a different way, and he had to put all his eggs in that basket. Whereas, Patrick Mahomes, he can rely on different things. Like, he has magic in different ways, and that's okay. If you ever get a quarterback to have the athletic ability of a Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson, and an Allen with the mind of Tom Brady, then we could really get into the conversation of, okay, can this particular quarterback become the GOAT, right? That's the best of both worlds. We haven't seen it yet. I don't know if we'll ever see that. Maybe we will. But that's just kind of what puts Tom Brady at the top, is that no one else really read or saw the game the same way that he did.
Yeah, and it's just an interesting debate, and I'm glad that it's kind of dead. Like, people will keep it alive. And look, Patrick Mahomes, 29 years old. Like, he's turning 30. Like, he's got a lot of runway, hopefully, you would think. And I have no ill will or qualms about the guy being as successful as he is. It's incredible. Just getting the three-peat would have been one of those bonus bullets in the chamber. Because I still think most people would go, well, Brady still got 7. But when their careers are said and done, he would have had that little extra thing to put him one rung up. Oh, I did this thing that Tom never did, though. I went 3 in a row. Well, now that's gone. And so now, as you stack it in totality, let's say he wins 3 more. Let's say he gets to 6. It's even if he tied him at 7, I would still say Tom is greater than him, because when you start comparing the best of the best, Wayne versus Mario, Gordy versus Bobby, whoever you want to, do it with, Montana and Brady for a long time. What you have to start doing is splitting those fine hairs, Albert. And when you start doing that, let's say he gets to 7. Okay, Pat's got 7, Tom's got 7. You're going to sit there and start pulling the little daggers out and go, well, Tom beat you twice in the playoffs. Tom smoked you in a Super Bowl. Like
Right.
Tom had orchestrated the greatest comeback in North American pro sports history. Like that, Pat doesn't have those special little bullets, and not getting that three-peat, which would have been his little bullet that he had, I think really hurts his ability to be considered the greatest of all time, no matter what happens for the rest of his career, unless he wins 8.
Okay, so a few things. I think if Patrick Mahomes were to win 6 or 7 Super Bowls, I don't know how much he would care about being known as the greatest of all time, because he's going to be in that category because no one else has ever been there or done that, right? So he'll be there with Tom. If he's 1A or 1B, that's for you to debate and other people, and that's a difficult debate to have because now you're truly splitting hairs. And 2, you think that the 28-3 was the greatest comeback in North American sports history?
I'm having a hard time in a championship game figuring out what's greater than that.
What about when the Sox came back against the Yankees being down 3-0?
That was incredible, but it wasn't for the World Series. It's not the same. Like, that's a great one, and it is probably the best one you could reach for.
Yeah.
But I would still put it to, like, I know it's a different sport. It's 7 games. That's what would inch me toward the Super Bowl win more, though. It's one shot. You don't get 3 bullets and then you come back to life.
Yeah.
Like, but that one, like, that's as good as it gets next to 28-3.
Yeah, of
like
course.
28-3 is.
We're talking about 2 things that were, almost impossible to even think of and almost impossible to even pull off. I'm just, I'm trying to think in my head on the fly here of some other great comebacks, and I think maybe those 2 are at the top of the list.
I think they would be in the lexicon of North American sports, certainly. Yeah. I mean, when you expand it to that Barcelona comeback in the Champions League a few years ago against PSG down 5-1, that was crazy.
There's got to be something. There's something in golf that I'm forgetting. I feel like there's something in golf that I'm forgetting here.
Yeah, there'd be a few in golf. Well, I mean, remember when Greg Norman shanked away the Masters that one year? What was that, 94? The Great White Shark. The Great White Shark, man.
The Great White Shark.
Yeah. Or as Jeff O'Neill likes to refer to him as the Great White Shart. So he had a tough cut. He had a few majors slip away from him, actually.
Oh, yeah. He's been catching strays for a few years now, ever since he left the PGA, went to Live. Like, no, not even the people at Live talk well about the guy.
No, he's not a popular dude. Greg Norman's a bitter man. And ultimately, I don't think Patrick Mahomes will be. I think that he'll bounce back from this. I think he'll get at least 1 more. I would be surprised 2. But what it really hinges on for me is Andy Reid. Like, does Andy Reid stick around long enough for them to put that type of thing together? Does Steve Spagnuolo, like, you would think that Spags, not now, but very soon, within a year, like, you would think Spagnuolo was going to get calls to be a head coach.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, but yeah, interesting to kind of dissect what it all means. But ultimately, he's going to need 7 of these bad boys to be able to.
Look at that thing. What, did you buy that off Tom?
No, it's a replica. Obviously, it's a replica. A buddy of mine bought me this for Christmas years ago. Long time
you wear
ago.
Like
what is this one?
You wear it like you're on the team, Ryan.
Yeah, well, I'm an honorary member. I'm a fan. 2004, man, back to back. How about that?
Incredible.
This is the Dion Branch one. That's the crazy thing too. Is like, no disrespect to those guys, but like, Tommy, man, like those first 3 Super Bowls, he was throwing to people that, like, you'd have to look up their names on Wikipedia to figure out who they are. It's not like he was throwing to, and hey, like Ben Watson and Troy Brown, like good players here. Dion Branch.
Yeah, but he was a master at making everybody better. That's just what he did. That was part of the Brady magic, man.
He was magical, man, for sure. Before we quickly talk about some hockey stuff, because I know you want to talk about fancy pants for Clarkey here.
I only wanted to rattle Clarkey.
It'll lift his spirits as he recovers from his sickness because he watches the show. What did you think of Tom up in the booth? Like, he talk about catching strays. Like, people are not happy about his performance this year. I thought he was fine. You know?
Yeah, listen, that's one of the things I was really interested in listening to at the Super Bowl because, listen, that's a big spot for him to be in. And yeah, I thought he was fine. I mean, he wasn't spectacular. Let's not forget, this is his first year in the booth. And, you know this as well as anyone, Ryan. That's not an easy thing to do, to jump in front of a microphone and call a game. I know he's a color guy, but to articulate what you're thinking and what you're seeing and not to make it about yourself. And I think that's a difficult thing to do for a player going into the booth as a color guy, is not to, talk about every situation like you're in that situation, even though that's kind of what everyone wants to hear. I thought he was okay. I think he's going to get better. Like, if we learn anything about Tom Brady, he's so into what he does, and he wants to learn as much as he possibly can, that he's only going to get better. And that's how these things work. So I had no issues with him in the Super Bowl. I thought that even the play, I can't remember the play guy's name, slipping on top of my mind.
Kevin Burkhardt.
Yeah, Burkhardt. Yeah, Burkhardt was great. I thought
he's fantastic.
He filled in the gaps when he needed to, and it was fine. But if you think that Brady is just not going to be a good color guy, I think you got another thing coming. I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Honestly, too, and like, it's not an excuse that I'm trying to build in for my boy here, my precious Tom. But yeah. I think that he was like genuinely shell shocked by how bad the game was. Like, yeah. I think he was revved up to like break down some Mahomes magic and the crazy juke and jive that he could get away from guys and make a crazy flip pass. And we just didn't get it. We got none of it up until that garbage time 65-yard rocket.
Yeah.
And I think he was trying to kind of be like, what's going on with these guys right now?
Well, that also puts him in a tough situation, because when it comes to a blowout, what do? It's time for story time for big picture talk. You can't break down every single play when, the Chiefs are down by 30 points or whatever it was. So that's another aspect that he's probably not even used to. It's like, okay, the play-by-play guy is going to start throwing stuff at you. Start telling us some stories, Tom, because you've been here more than anybody else. It's a tough spot to be in too, right? I will say I have one criticism, is that he tries to be funny, but I don't think he's actually a funny guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when someone's trying to be funny and not funny, it comes off so flat. So I think maybe just try to avoid that, Tom. Tell us some stories. Tell us what it's like to be on that field in certain situations, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I know he does it in the spirit of like trying to be self-deprecating, which is great. But if it doesn't like come off naturally, like, we don't need you to be a comedian up there. Like, Romo's kind of naturally funny, and like, listening to Romo freaking out. Oh, I don't know, Jim. Like, it's just something about Romo. That's a bad Romo impersonation.
Why is Romo? I don't understand. Everyone's got something to say about everybody in the booth. I love Romo. Who doesn't love somebody with
I do too. Yeah. I love Romo.
I think he's great all the time. Like, what do you want these guys to do? He's passionate about the game. He loves the game. When he first came on the scene, everyone's like, oh my God, Romo's great. He can see 3 plays ahead. Now he's annoying.
I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why people have had the heel turn. I think that real fans of the game still really enjoy. I love listening to that guy freaking out. And he's like, almost because he's so passionate like that, he's like become a meme. Like, you see them online all the time. Oh, I don't know, Jim. Like, it's so funny listening to him melting down in the booth next to
It's
Jim.
like Collinsworth, right? Everyone loves to call him out. The Collinsworth.
Oh.
He says a lot of the same things over and over, but I think in this social media world, it's like we're so overexposed and people are using them in memes and stuff that, you start to watch the broadcast, maybe it starts clouding your judgment of that person. But let's not take away the fact that these guys are great at what they do. They really are. Listen, teach his own. If you don't like somebody, you don't like somebody. But it's just funny to me how people turn on someone so quickly after hearing, a few odd things there on social media.
I don't love it either. And like, Collinsworth's fantastic too. Like, the guy, he's so passionate. And he says a lot of the same stuff because that's what any of us would do. I do it in the booth, and literally everybody in the booth has like some sayings they stick to when things happen. And like, I love listening to here's a guy like it's great. I like them both, man. Tom's just got it. Tom has to find his here's a guy thing. That's what Brady's got to find, and he'll figure it out.
He'll get
figure
there,
it
man.
out.
He'll get there. It's Tom Brady.
He will. So let's talk a little bit about this Four Nations face-off thing, dude.
Sure.
Are you even fired up about it? Like I watched last night and was like, I'm not that excited about it.
Really? No, listen.
I can't get there.
It took me a little bit because leading up to it, you just don't know because we haven't seen it before, and it's only Four Nations, and they're talking about an All-Star game. It could be similar to an All-Star game, but once two things happen. Once Sidney Crosby decided to practice with the team regardless of his injury to try and play for Canada, that told me he wants to play for keeps. And if your captain, number 87, is going into that dressing room and is telling the players, well, not even telling the players, just showing the players, listen, I'm hurt, but I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I can to play for this team during this Four Nations. That told me that he's going to take it seriously, and the rest of Team Canada will definitely take it seriously, and other teams will follow. And then Drew Doughty. I mean, Drew Doughty came off a pretty severe ankle injury. He fractured his ankle in the preseason, just came back, started playing a few games with the LA Kings, and did whatever he could to be on Team Canada, and he made it. And so when you have those two players who are willing to overcome their injuries and even play through injury to play for Canada in this tournament, that just showed me that this is going to be a lot better than what most people think. And I think that's what we saw last night. Is it playoff level? I mean, not quite. It might get there on Saturday when you have, Canada against the United States, which is going to be a phenomenal game. It's not quite there yet, but it's pretty close. And Connor McDavid, after the game, was asked about that. He goes, what do you think about, people calling this an all-star game type of tournament, pre-tournament? He goes, yeah, I think a lot of people are wrong. This is not an all-star game. This is high skill. It's fast. Drew Doughty, after the game, said that's the fastest game he's ever been a part of. So that's all you need to know. Maybe it's not as rough and tough as we want it to be. It will probably get there, but it's a really good high-level tournament so far after one game.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like Sweden, give them their credit. Like they made a real game of it. And then old fancy pants, Mitchie Martins, steps up in overtime. He's got an underrated shot. Like I think like Marner, if he didn't play for the Leafs and didn't have that pressure as like the magician, the dish master, like he's got a good enough shot. I think that if he felt like it, he could score 50. I really do.
I don't know about that.
I do. I think he could score 50 if he like just took, because like again, he doesn't have like that hard heavy shot, but it's like Gretzky-esque in the sense that like it's just quick and accurate. It's not going to overpower you, but he's got a sneaky shot, and he showed it off in overtime again last night. You used to see him do it all the time with the London Knights.
He loves that blocker side wrister. I mean, that's
what I mean. That's what I mean. He did real well for himself. I'm sure that knowing you were coming on the show tonight, you were chuckling a little to yourself that Mitchie Martins got it. You were ready to give it to Clarkey, eh?
Just for Clarkey, I'm sure he'd have loved that one. I'll be honest.
$15 million a year.
I didn't think he had a great game. I didn't think a lot of those guys on that Team Canada had a great game. It could have been better. There were moments where I just didn't see enough. And I thought Mitch Marner's playing with McDavid. And, McDavid plays with Hyman, and who digs the pucks out of the corners for McDavid? It's Hyman, and that's not something that Mitch Marner does. Not saying that's what he has to do, but I think it's an adjustment for him and McDavid. I will say this, though. If Canada falls asleep for 2 periods against the States, they're going to get blown away on Saturday. And I think that's really important to remember. Okay, they came out hot. They were fantastic. The crowd was high. The energy was high. Sweden didn't really know what hit them. I don't know if Sweden realized how hard Canada was going to play in this thing, and then they kind of clicked back in and started playing a really good game. Binnington let in a couple bad ones, even though he made up for it in overtime. But, as much as we're on a high with Team Canada right now, there's a lot not to like about their performance. But listen, they picked up the points. They won the game. Let's see what happens on Saturday.
That's the big one for sure, man. And it's always a big one when you join us on the show. Albert Vartanian, thanks so much for doing this, brother. Good to see you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Send my best to Clarkey.
Will do, brother. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, no Clarkey. Who am I going to talk to? Well, producer Adam's going to jump on. We're going to go through some sports hot takes, and I'm going to see what I think of some of what he throws at me here on Instigating. Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. Just me this week. Clarkey under the weather. Get better, my guy. I'm sure that the Mitch Marner overtime goal in Canada's opener has really lifted his spirits. We can feel it. Clarkey's on the upswing because Fancy Pants supplied a game-winning goal and a thriller against Sweden. Thanks to our buddy Albert Vartanian for coming on too. Longtime freelance sports host, done a lot of work with Homestand Sports and so many others. Like I said, used to work with Albert. I first met Albert. I was like, oh, geez. We're joined by producer Adam, by the way. Producer Adam
hi.
is here. Hi, man. Yes, producer Adam. As I teased, producer Adam's going to join us here, and we're gonna play some Rate My Take here.
Yep.
I first met Albert at Fight Network. I got a part-time weekend job at Fight Network because a friend of mine who was dating and is now long married to a friend of a girl I was seeing in college. He was the executive producer there. He still is, I'm pretty sure. Shout out Tyler Warman. What a beauty he is. Him and Laura. Say hi to Frank too, their young guy. He offered me a job. He was like, yeah, we need captioning people. So I was actually working in the captioning department.
Oh.
So I would work in a factory in Arthur, Ontario from Monday to Friday, night shift. And then Saturday and Sunday, I would drive to Toronto from Arthur to Fight Network at like 4 p.m. and I would caption shows. And I didn't know what I was getting. Could be old school UFC, Japanese wrestling, kickboxing. And I would have to type out the closed captioning for hearing impaired viewers. And that was interesting, although I will say I did get to like edit some stuff for the website. I got to produce a fight promo thing that we did the one night before a Floyd Mayweather fight. Like I got to do some fun stuff too.
Nice.
But it was mostly captioning, and Albert worked there and was an editor and captioner as well. It was, that's where we first met, and just what a good dude.
Oh, yes.
He's a throwback.
Absolutely. What year was that you're doing that for Fight Network, approximately?
Fight Network, geez. I'm going to kick myself back to, I want to say that was probably 2013 or 14, and I was only there for like 5-6 months.
Right.
On weekends. When I started at Fight Network, not to turn this into a history of Ryan Drury here, when I started there, they launched, because the guy that owns Fight Network owns like 13 other channels, including like Extreme Sports and stuff like that. So they launched, when I started there for the NFL season, or it was actually might have been for baseball. I'm not sure. My memory's foggy. They launched a fantasy sports channel.
Oh.
And it was going to be like a 24/7 channel dedicated to fantasy sports. And I think it maybe didn't do awesome. And they invested like quite a bit of money in it, and a lot of people got let go.
Oh no!
Including the entire captioning department. My boss got let go, and they outsourced all the captioning to another company. And a lot of people ended up losing their job. That's media for you. But there you go. Yeah. Albert and we go way back. How about that?
I was just thinking about that, because if you had got that job today, I would guarantee you, I bet you they'd be like, okay, you got the job. Do you have good internet? Here's the program. Don't come in. Right? Like, that would probably be the sell. You work from your house and you do the captioning.
You're not incorrect. I definitely think that would be the way it would be situated. Yeah, it would be all from home stuff. Maybe go into the office on occasion for a live event or something.
Yeah.
But
anyways, That's all inside baseball with our industry. People
Inside baseball, dude. There it is. Well, maybe we'll get some baseball hot takes here. I don't know what you have cooked up for me here, but rate my take. Let's bring it back in here. And I know you got some stuff to toss my way, and I'll react to it appropriately, inappropriately. We'll see.
Absolutely. Well,
what do you got?
First, we have to play the stinger. Listen, I made that up, so I got to use it.
Absolutely.
All right, so
yeah, you made it. You drag it out.
So my first one is the Four Nations tournament. You and Albert were talking about it a bit. I'm excited for it, and I do have something later that might involve my couch potato at the Four Nations. But what do you think? Like, give me some more on that. What do you think? Now, they announced that they're going to do the World Cup of Hockey in 2026, I think, was when the NHL started doing. 28? Okay, yeah, right. The Olympics are in 26.
After the Olympics, yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think of that? Like these extra tournaments? Are they kind of going back to when they had North America versus the world? That kind of thing?
They can't do that because that was like bizarre. And I know what people are going to say. Well, then Draisaitl can't play probably, right? Because Germany won't get there like Anže Kopitar with Slovenia. And my response to that is too bad. Look, Canada didn't play in the Soccer World Cup for 30 years. Like, you don't just get to come because you have like one superstar.
Right.
Your country's got to invest and get better at the sport. And I know there's a lot of economic stuff that goes into that. I understand. But that's the way it is. We can't have a Young Guns and a Team Europe. Like, it just, and that's what will happen, though. Because it's an NHL run event. The World Cup's it's an NHL thing. And they want Draisaitl there. And they want Kopitar and guys like that there. So can't have the Russians, though. No Russia. And that's my biggest problem with these. It's just like Russia's not there.
Right.
And I'm sorry for what everybody... Look, I don't agree with anything that the people that run the country are up to. I think the Russian people are fantastic people. I know some Russians; they're fantastic people.
I'd agree
the
with
people
you.
that run their people that run their country are psychopaths.
Yes.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But Kirill Kaprizov came out the other day and said, I'm sad that I'll probably never get a chance to play for my friends, like for our national team. We're not going to be able to do it.
Well, they can still do it, right? It's in the Olympics. It's the athletes from Russia, the former Russian nation or whatever. The Olympic athletes from Russia.
It's just a very complicated subject that I am not educated enough to talk about. I'm educated enough to say I completely disagree with what's going on in the Ukraine and the broader region, on the whole. But
yeah, and we literally have like 15 minutes left of the show. There's no way we're explaining this and the geopolitical pressures. But I'm not
in the Foreign Affairs Office. I don't know what to say other than to say not having Russia play in these tournaments takes away from it.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
That's just a fact.
I agree.
It is.
I like the idea behind the Four Nations. I don't like how they're segmenting out a whole population of the NHL players that cannot play in it just because it's Four Nations.
Yeah, I think it's... And they did this because Russia, the stuff going on with Russia. Otherwise, they'd just be in this tournament. But Russia versus Canada is the greatest. I know the States are putting their stakes in there, but Russia-Canada historically is the one.
Right.
And these tournaments suffer quality-wise when they're not playing for whatever reason it may be.
I agree.
Valid or not.
Now, when I bring Draisaitl, do you know he very well could owe his hockey heritage to Canada? Do you know that? Like, why does all of a sudden Germany... Because in World War II, Canada introduced Germany to hockey. As part of... There were Canadian soldiers that were wrapping up World War II and were stationed in Germany. And they actually taught the German soldiers at that time hockey. And that became very, very popular. So that's why Germany, like that's how long it takes, unless the country's behind it economically, like Canada, the United States, Sweden, Finland. It takes a long time for those players to come up. So it's very interesting to me that Leon could actually owe a debt to Canada down the road if we traced it back.
Figuratively, they all do. I mean, it's our game, right? I mean, like even Russia, like Lloyd Percival wrote that book, and they based their early training. He's a Canadian guy, an expat that was over there and taught the Russians hockey drills and a new system, a new way to kind of play, and they made it their own. That's why they were such a dominant force for so long internationally. Yeah, like it all boils down to Canada, but you know. Yeah, like the Four Nation. I don't know. You know what? Saturday will be the game where it really decides whether I'm like super invested or not. Because it's USA, Canada, big boys against big boys. Let's see what happens. I don't know. That's my thoughts on it.
I agree 100% on that, and we can all agree on one thing: Mario Lemieux got the best standing ovation last night in Montreal ever. Like. Well, it's Mario. It's Quebec. Come on. Yeah.
Well, right, in Montreal, they do the best standing O's.
Oh, yeah.
They do the best standing O's there.
Yep, for sure. Okay, so we probably have time for one more. Pitchers and catchers reported to Dunedin today. What do you think about upcoming baseball? Set aside all the crazy, is Vlad signed? Is he not signed? What's happening? Management sucks. Set aside all that. Are you excited for baseball? Just period. And that spring training's going with our like monumentous 7-foot snowbanks here.
You know, I'm excited for baseball, but I feel like this year my excitement for it will wane much earlier than it typically does because I still don't think the Jays are any good. And I think the Cubs will be good. Like they signed there's the rumor that they're going to sign Nick Pivetta, which is great. Add to the rotation. I'm excited about Kyle Tucker, obviously. I'm not as excited as I was the last couple years, though.
Right.
They took away my Oakland Athletics, so I had to jump bandwagon over to the Cubbies, which I'm fine with. Go Cubs, fly the W. The Jays are just weirdos. And I don't know what to make of whatever they're doing with this roster.
But Max is pitching. Come on, Max. And after his prime, though, like typical Blue Jays, we've got the good player after his prime.
If it was 10 years ago and they got Max Scherzer, I'd be so fired up. Like I'd get tickets for opening day. He'd be pitching opening day.
Well, he would be. He would. And it was so funny because they're firing all these stats on Jay's social media about how Max is a great pitcher. Look at these previous stats. Only pitcher to have two no-hitters in a single season. I'm like, yeah, that's in the past. He's a great guy. I'm sure he can pitch really good still. But that was, like you said, 10 years ago. I don't know when he did the 2 no-hitters in a single season, but I'm sure he's not going to throw 2 no-hitters with these Jays teams behind him this season.
No, and I don't know. I'm excited, but not amped, is what I would say. And mostly, you know what it is? It's the Dodgers getting every player under the sun.
Right.
And just like, it's silly. And I just look at it and go like, well, there's 120 wins, I guess, and they'll just win the World Series again. Yay. Yeah, like it just feels like teleport me to November. Like,
well, they're the New York Yankees of the 90s, right? The Yankees just steamrolled everybody in that division every single year for a decade. All felt like a decade.
It feels that way. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm not amped.
Right,
is what I'll say. Good. We got time for more. What else do you have sitting?
Well, we'll probably wrap it up with this last one because this one is touchy. On the weekend or a few days ago at a Seattle Kraken practice facility, there was an I believe 12 or 13 game, and I was astounded. We're not going to show the video. You can go find it. I'm sure you can find it. I was absolutely astounded watching this clip where a parent was not only yelling at the ref, but actually physically came onto the ice and then knocked the 2 referees down. Now, thankfully, they're not seriously injured. I'm sure there's some bumps and bruises, and maybe I don't think they broke anything, but I'm sure they're hurting because it hurts to hit the ice when you're not ready to hit the ice. But what do you think, Ryan? Like, I'm just astounded. Like, that has no place in the game, period.
What those poor young officials needed was our friend Ron Asselstein to come flying from the far
Right?
side and bury that guy. Look, yeah, the video went viral. I'm sure if you're a sports fan, you saw it. Like,
Yeah.
it was all over the place. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it makes me angry. Outside of just to simply say, gotta be lifetime bans for people like this. Like, the only people hurt by this are the kids, the officials, of course. And yeah, it's a wonder why we have so much trouble throughout most sports with getting officials. And we need the officials out there to call it. Yeah, like, they're not perfect. These are volunteers a lot of the time, or they're getting like $40 a game or something to be out there and make sure that your kids have some structure when they go out there. Otherwise, you might as well just play house league hockey with wide open chaos, no blue lines, and it's pond hockey. And at that stage, you might as well not even spend money to get the equipment. You might as well just freeze your backyard and throw your kid out there and let them have a free skate, because that's what it is without officials.
Yep. Absolutely.
We get on here and we harp on the pro refs. We get on here and we get upset with pro referees and how could you not make that call? Well, the other guy on the show does anyway, but I do too. But like, when it comes to youth sports, like, come on, man, really?
That's ridiculous.
And you're unhinged to jump over and assault a young person like that who's giving their time so that your kid can play not only the game we love, but any sport, any game. And it's embarrassing, and it's just got to be blanket, uniform, unappealable lifetime bans from sporting facilities for people that do stuff like this.
Well, I agree.
It's got to be, and again, it's got to be no appeal. It's a one and done thing. Yeah. Because it's an extreme, and people go, well, that's an extreme punishment. It's an extreme thing to do.
Oh yeah, like to walk
jumped
onto
over the glass, and got on the over the glass onto the ice to push over it because you thought the slashing call that he called against little Billy wasn't a good call.
Yeah, I agree. And
lifetime bans.
Do you know who I feel the worst for in this whole situation is that kid, that dad's kid. That kid will be followed the whole time. He'll be like, "Oh, you're the kid whose dad did such and such years ago." Like, they'll remember that.
Exactly. And that sucks for little Billy.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that's actually the kid's name.
No, I don't know either. They're keeping it pretty secret, which is perfectly fine. They need to not let that kid's name out.
But all the kids on that team are going to be like, Jesus, Billy's dad.
Well,
what
and
that?
The hockey community, the rumor will get around and it'll follow him, and he might not get selected for teams just for that reason, period. He might not get selected for rep teams and higher up leagues. Yeah, because they don't want to deal with that crap that comes with the parent.
Someone said to me once, a coach, a minor coach of a high-end U14 team, I'm not going to say who, they said, and they've been doing it a long, long time, coached in junior hockey, coached in major junior, coached in the AHL, guy I know, and he works with a very high-end U14 team. And he said to me, when I started doing this, we were coaching kids, and now we have to coach parents.
Oh, I believe it.
I was like, that's crazy. What a crazy statement.
Right? They probably spend more time coaching the parents, like, okay, you got to keep your like all the youth sport, like all the stuff they have up in arenas, like play safe and all that. They probably spend more time. Like, I know when you sign up for the Steelheads hockey here in Hanover as a parent, you have to take a course on that, which I'm fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad they're doing that kind of thing, especially for people that would jump onto the ice, that they have that level of knowledge, but it's ridiculous that they have to enforce that level of knowledge when you sign your kid up to play in hockey.
There's
it's common sense. It's just common sense. You should not be jumping on the ice and doing this. You should not be yelling at referees obscenities and cursing them and stuff at this level of hockey.
No, yeah, that's just the thing, right? Like, you step back a little and you look at it in totality and kind of go like, why is a guy like the guy who told me that story, like, why are they having to spend time in an office with parents talking through what's going on with the team?
Yep.
They're not on the team.
Yeah. Right?
Should be spending time on the ice, drawing up plays, teaching kids the fundamentals, making them better. Not sitting in an office with some angry guy who's mad that his kid's on the third line.
I agree. You know, it'd be interesting way back
It's like these parents want their kids to have no adversity.
Right?
And that's what you actually learn from. You don't learn from being the best all the time.
Yeah.
You learn from going, you can do that better. You're on the third line. Work hard and work your way up the lineup. Earn your ice. Parents don't think, no, my kid's really good because he can backhand, toe drag, and go top shelf, and the other kids on the team can't. So he should just get 29 minutes of ice time.
Exactly.
Like,
why is he only getting 2 minutes? Well, he was not playing that well, so we benched him for a bit. That's how the game works.
It's a wild thing to explain to some guy. It's absolutely insane, dude. All right.
You know, I know we got to get going, but you know who'd be interested to get the opinion on this, and I'm sure he does have a very strong opinion. It's friend of the show, Steve McAllister. I ran into Steve on December 28th at the PGHL All-Star Game, and he was there observing the referees for the All-Star Game, who were newer referees. He was observing for them. So I'm like, oh my God, could you imagine? He probably just flipped his top when this came. I'm sure somebody sent it to him. He's had to have seen it.
He tweeted about it, I'm pretty sure.
Did he? Okay. Like, I'm sure he flipped his top about it.
I know he's aware of it. Yeah. I would not want to mess with an angry Steve McCallie. Friend of the show, beauty of a guy. I wouldn't want to piss that gentleman off. Let me tell you what.
And he's doing great work with those young referees. We need the young referees to come up to have referees in the pros. Anyways, we could talk forever.
He's doing a bunch of consulting stuff with the OHA and helping officials out, which of course
doing great work, Steve.
It's a beauty. Steve McAllister, he's a legend. All right, let's wrap it up with some couch potato action here. And I always let Clarkey go first, so I'm going to let you go first too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, I've got a couch potato, like I said, that relates to the Four Nations, so I'll just let this play for a bit, then I want to talk about it for a bit.
Firepower for you. Here McDavid getting it back to McCarr at the line. Back onto the stick of Connor McDavid. Gets it back from Crosby. Back to Crosby. What a goal to start it off! Power play, Nathan Mackinnon!
And why couldn't I not bring up my boy Nate Dogg with an amazing power play goal? And how is this like? We're watching the highlight, the replay. How is this even fair, Ryan? Like, the line for this power play is Sam Reinhart, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Nathan MacKinnon, and Cale Makar. Like, is that even fair? And of course, it's a sweet backhand pass from Crosby right over onto the stick of MacKinnon, and then he puts it in. It's unfair. It's about as disgusting a top power play unit as you could ever find throughout the history of the game in terms of skill. Yeah, top to bottom, it's psychotic. That's. I agree. I'd actually watched the highlight twice just to hear those names all get called, because Cale to Connor McDavid, to Sidney Crosby, back to McDavid, back to Crosby, over to MacKinnon, they score. I'm like, did I just hear all the names correctly? Who's on the ice? That's what I'm liking about the Four Nations so far. So that's my couch potato for the week.
Yeah, it's a good one. Nate's he's leading the league in points. He's a freak, man. He's special stuff. He is special stuff.
Listen, this pennant over here has just the first two Stanleys. It doesn't have the third. Maybe it has to have a fourth soon. You never know. Nicias is playing really good.
He's good. He's good enough to potentially go and get another one for sure. He is. Yeah. Speaking of special and really, really good, my couch potatoes. It's very simple. It's my guy. It's Tommy Brady. It's not a surprise. And listen. A lot of people, we talked about this earlier with my friend Albert Vartanian. Follow him on social media. We talked a lot about people coming for my guy. Been a lot of people over the last couple years, really, trying to come for my guy's legacy here. And it's just not happening. I'm sorry. You can't do this stuff if you're Pat Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning. Run down the list. You are all firmly in no better than second, because nobody is better than this gentleman right here, okay? I'm sorry. Goodbye. See ya. You can't do that in 2 Super Bowl losses, losing by a combined 40 points, and still be down 4 rings to the man. and claim to me that this guy is already at GOAT status. He's not. And as a matter of fact, he's not even close. I love Patrick Mahomes. I love watching him play. He's one of the most incredible talents we've ever seen in the league. But he's not TB12. And very simply, that is why Tom Brady could be my couch potato every week.
He could.
Adam,
Oh, absolutely.
of what he achieved. He could be my couch potato every single week. And that's that. GOAT? Not until you push my guy off the pedestal, and you're not even at the base of the pedestal. You're not even in the same room as the pedestal. You're not in the same state as the pedestal.
Do you know who is in the same room as one of your other guys? Ovi and Wayne Gretzky. That is coming up close. They're predicting April. Sportsnet stat said April
10th.
Yeah.
April 10th, I believe, against Carolina is what he's lining up for. 16 away.
It's crazy.
Big O. How about that?
Yep.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you can watch the show Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9 with our friends on Whiteman TV. That's channel 6 for Whiteman subscribers. We debut on our YouTube channel Friday nights at 9. Follow us on social media at Instigating Pod. Find the podcast version on all your favorite apps. Get well soon, Clarkey. Mitch Marner's worth $15 million. We'll see you next week here on Instigating.